Can I tell you something? The first corporate yoga class I ever taught was at a company health fair where everyone arrived in business attire. The conference room had a massive table that couldn't be moved, and rolling, cushy chairs took up most of the room. People were unfamiliar with yoga and they were skeptical. It was nothing like teaching in a studio. And that's exactly what makes corporate yoga both challenging and also incredibly rewarding. Despite the limitations, that class went well and it paid super handsomely. If you're looking to make yoga a reliable source of income, don't forget that corporate classes can be a great revenue stream. Welcome to Yoga Teacher Confidential, Secrets of Becoming a Great Yoga Teacher. I'm Sage Roundtree. Today, we're diving into teaching corporate yoga classes, how to get these valuable gigs, what to charge, how to navigate the unique dynamics of teaching people who work together, and how to create sequences that work for students wearing office attire. Whether you're looking to diversify your teaching schedule or to reach students who might never step into a traditional yoga studio, or to create more stable income in your teaching business, corporate yoga offers tremendous opportunities if you know how to approach it strategically. Let's start with the fundamental question. How do you land corporate teaching opportunities in the first place? While some corporate classes come through studios that have established relationships with local businesses, many of the best opportunities come through direct outreach or personal connections. The most straightforward approach is identifying companies that might value yoga for their employees, then reaching out to the right person within that organization. In larger companies, this is typically someone in human resources, or HR, specifically those focused on wellness initiatives or on employee benefits. In smaller companies, you might connect directly with the office manager or even the CEO. Your outreach should emphasize the specific benefits yoga offers to workplaces: reduced stress and anxiety, decreased absenteeism, improved focus and productivity, team building, and mitigation of the physical effects of desk work. Frame yoga as an investment in employee well-being that yields tangible returns, not just as a nice perk. Don't overlook your existing network. Your students who work for companies with wellness programs can be powerful advocates and help you get your foot in the door. Let them know you have room for corporate clients and ask if they're willing to make connections for you. Industry-specific events can also be goldmines for connections. Chamber of Commerce gatherings, business networking events, or health fairs often put you in direct contact with the decision makers. Consider offering a short desk yoga demonstration at these events to showcase your expertise. Now, as a studio owner, I found these connections aren't great at bringing people to the yoga studio, but as a teacher who's willing to bring the yoga to them, you're a huge potential asset to their corporation. When you approach potential clients, have a clear professional proposal ready. This should outline what you offer, the benefits for their specific workplace, logistics requirements like props or space needs, and pricing options. Include testimonials from other corporate clients if you have them, or from your current individual students who can speak to how yoga has improved their work performance. Be prepared to start small. Many companies prefer to test the waters with a one-time workshop or with a short series before committing to ongoing classes. You can see these opportunities as auditions and deliver your absolute best because they often expand into regular gigs when they are well received. Once you've generated interest, the conversation inevitably turns to money. Pricing corporate yoga appropriately is crucial, not just for your own sustainability as a yoga teacher, but for how your services are valued by the organization. Corporate yoga should be priced at a premium compared to regular studio classes or even to private lessons. You're not just teaching yoga, you're providing a specialized service tailored to the workplace needs, often requiring additional preparation, travel, and flexibility around their schedule. When calculating your rate, consider these factors: travel time to and from the location, setup and breakdown time, your preparation time, any special materials or handouts you'll provide, and the value of the specific expertise you bring to their workplace context. Most corporate teachers use one of three pricing models. The flat rate model charges a set fee per class regardless of student attendance. This is usually the cleanest approach, and it provides predictable income for you and predictable expense for the company. For a 45 or 60-minute yoga class, your rates might range from $150 to $300 depending on your location and your experience. A per-participant model charges based on how many employees attend, often with a minimum guaranteed amount, a floor. This might be appropriate for drop-in formats where attendance fluctuates significantly. A typical range could be $15 to $25 per participant, with a minimum of $150 or so per session. The package model offers discounted rates for purchasing multiple classes up front. This encourages your students' commitment while providing you with more stable income. For example, you might offer single classes at $200 each for corporations, but a 10-class corporate package for $1,750 or $175 per session. When you discuss pricing with your corporate contact, be confident in your value. Remember that companies routinely pay consultants, trainers, wellness professionals significantly more per hour than most yoga teachers typically charge in a studio. Position yourself as a wellness professional, bringing specialized expertise to the workplace, not just as a yoga teacher filling in at their office. Be clear about what's included in your rate. Is props rental an additional fee? Do you charge extra for developing custom sequences for their specific workplace needs? What about transportation costs for locations beyond a certain distance of your home base? It's also worth noting that payment terms for corporate clients are often different from studio teaching, where money changes hands before or at the time of the transaction. Create a professional invoice. You can find templates anywhere online or in your typical word processing software. It should have clear payment terms. Typically net 30, meaning the payment will be due 30 days after the invoice is received. Be prepared to navigate the corporate accounting system, which might require you to complete vendor paperwork or submit tax forms. Now let's address one of the most unique aspects of corporate yoga, teaching people who work together professionally. This creates group dynamics that are significantly different from a typical studio class where your students may not know each other. First, recognize that office hierarchies don't disappear when people roll out their mats. The CEO who struggles with balance poses or the department head who needs extra modifications might feel vulnerable in ways they wouldn't in other office settings. Similarly, junior employees might feel pressure to perform well at yoga if their supervisors are practicing nearby. To address this, establish from the beginning that yoga is a non-competitive practice where everyone works at their own level. I might explicitly say in corporate yoga classes, what happens on the yoga mat stays on the yoga mat, seeking to create a sense of safety around any perceived vulnerability. Be mindful of how you group students or how you demonstrate with participants. Try to avoid inadvertently reinforcing workplace hierarchies by consistently using the same people as examples, or by grouping people by their apparent physical capabilities, which might unintentionally align with office status. You may or may not know who's who in your corporate class, and I think that's a good thing. When I was an ambassador for Prana Clothing Company, they flew me to Seattle twice to teach corporate classes for REI Co-op. It's a big outdoor goods purveyor here in the US and Prana's biggest buyer. And that's how I wound up teaching not one, but two REI CEOs yoga. The first time, I didn't know who in the room was the CEO. I just knew they would be there, and I really appreciated not knowing. That CEO later became Secretary of the Interior. The other time, I did know who the CEO was, and it was really clear that his presence was felt by everyone in the room and that it affected their experience. Not negatively, but it was certainly there. Corporate classes often include a wide range of experience levels, from complete yoga beginners to dedicated practitioners. Rather than aiming for the middle, which satisfies no one, I suggest you design your sequences with simultaneous variations clearly offered throughout. Of course, this is just best practice. It allows everybody to customize their experience without feeling singled out. Be especially aware of language that might unintentionally exclude or alienate participants. Spiritual terminology, Sanskrit terms, or references to yoga philosophy might be embraced or even expected in studio settings, but they might create discomfort in workplace environments where people of various religious backgrounds practice together as colleagues. Corporate classes present unique opportunities for appropriate community building. It's really different when you teach a room full of people who already know each other. Simple partner exercises or brief discussions can strengthen workplace relationships in new contexts, but always make them optional and be mindful of physical boundaries. Some colleagues might be really uncomfortable with hands-on work with their office mates. Remember that your students are usually coming to class directly from work responsibilities, then returning to them directly afterward. This means they're often carrying work stress into practice and might be mentally preoccupied with pending deadlines or recent meetings. Building in a slightly longer centering practice at the beginning of class can help with this transition. One of the most immediately apparent differences in corporate yoga is that your students may be wearing office clothes rather than yoga clothes. And if they do change, they probably don't have shower facilities available, so you need to keep them ready to report back to work. This requires thoughtful sequence design to ensure everyone can participate comfortably. Start by assessing the typical dress code at the organization. Some modern workplaces have casual environments. Performance clothing might be the norm, or at least acceptable on yoga days. But others maintain formal business attire expectations all day long. Ask your contact person about the dress code and whether employees typically change for wellness activities. If your students will remain in work clothes, design sequences with these constraints in mind. Focus on seated and standing poses that don't require stretchy clothing. Avoid poses that might expose midriffs or create awkward situations with skirts or dresses. Skip poses that put pressure on areas where business attire might have buttons, zippers, or belts. When I teach in corporate environments where changing isn't practical, I rely heavily on what you could call chair flow sequences, flowing movements performed while seated in office chairs or while standing beside them. These can be surprisingly effective for addressing common office-related tension and require no special clothing. For standing sequences, focus on poses that maintain a relatively narrow stance. This is also good practice if you're in a conference room or small space. Mountain pose variations, gentle standing twists, and modified sun salutations that eliminate the forward fold can work really well. If you're teaching warriors or lunges, opt for shorter stances that accommodate dress pants or even skirts. Clearly, you won't be doing three-legged downward-facing dog. For floor work, be selective and seek to offer some chair alternatives. If some participants are comfortable getting onto the floor in their work clothes, focus on seated poses that could be done in a chair or down on the floor, instead those that require people to lie down. Seated twists, gentle forward folds, even from the chair, and neck stretches can all be done effectively either from the floor or in a seat. Props become especially valuable in corporate settings. Keep a supply of yoga blocks, which can be used to raise the ground in forward folds, making them accessible without needing students to bend as deeply. Yoga straps or neckties that you can get at the thrift store can extend your students' reach without requiring a whole lot of flexibility. Shoes present another consideration. Some participants might be uncomfortable taking off their shoes in front of their colleagues. Design sequences that can be done with shoes on, or create a class structure where shoes come off just when you come down for seated floor work. One of my mentorship members teaches corporate yoga to steel workers, and she's had to design sequences for students wearing work boots on a factory floor. Regardless of the physical limitations, focus on breathwork and mindfulness, which require no special clothing and offer significant benefits for workplace stress management. A sequence with simple movements but deep breath awareness can be way more valuable than an elaborate flow that excludes half the participants because of how they're dressed. Beyond clothing considerations, the physical environment of corporate classes requires some specific adaptations. Unlike yoga studios that are built only for the purpose of being yoga studios, you'll be teaching in conference rooms or break areas or multi-purpose spaces that weren't necessarily designed for movement practices. always scout the location beforehand if you can. This allows you to plan for space limitations, notice any potential distractions, and note the available resources. Check out the flooring. Carpet requires really different modifications than hardwood or tile, especially if you won't have mats. Check the lighting options and the temperature control access. You'll likely have little say about controlling either lighting or temperature. Notice whether the windows have blinds or curtains you could draw for privacy. Furniture management becomes a key skill in corporate settings. Can the tables be moved? Are there enough chairs for seated practice? Is there a clear wall space for standing poses that might require extra balance support? Develop a quick, efficient setup routine that transforms the space as best you can with minimal disruption. Background noise is almost inevitable in workplace environments. Could be construction or office machinery or conversations or phone calls. All of these create acoustic challenges. It's useful to develop some visual cues to supplement your verbal instructions. Of course, you'll speak just a little bit louder without yelling at your students to relax. And if it's a really big space, you might use a wireless microphone for larger groups or particularly noisy environments. Privacy concerns might arise when you practice in workplace settings with glass walls or open floor plans. Try to position your students so they don't feel exposed to passing colleagues. If you feel like privacy is limited in your space, adapt the sequence to skip poses that might feel kind of vulnerable when they're visible to people who are not practicing. Technology dings and dongs are common in corporate classes. While you should encourage your participants to silence their devices, recognize that some may need to remain accessible for urgent work matters. I suggest you create a classroom culture where it's okay to briefly step away to handle critical issues, while encouraging full presence whenever possible. Time management is really important in corporate classes. Be sure to end on time. These classes are often scheduled tightly between meetings or during lunch. Develop reliable timing for your sequences and always include a proper closing, even if it's really short. Be punctual both at start and at the end, because your corporate students often have back-to-back commitments with no buffer time. Be sure you wear your watch or set a phone on clock mode exactly where you can see it so you can keep really careful track of time. My work with the teams at the University of North Carolina is a form of corporate class. In the almost 20 years I've been teaching various athletic teams there, I have led classes in the football locker room. That's always interesting. In a study hall, on the grass field at the football stadium, on the outdoor track, on the indoor track, on the turf field with the little rubber pellets in the field house, on several different weight room floors, on the basketball practice court, on the Dean Dome competition court at the Smith Center, by the side of the pool and on the diving mats at the natatorium, and in a banquet hall for the Rams Club, the Booster Club. That last one was the closest to a yoga studio, with hardwood floors and open space, but with a little creativity and a lot of planning, you can make any of these scenarios work. It's all an opportunity for presence and mindfulness. Now let's get specific about sequence design for corporate yoga classes. I found that effective corporate sequences address the physical challenges of office work while respecting the practical limitations of the environment. An office recovery sequence could focus on countering the physical effects of desk posture. Begin with seated neck and shoulder releases, move to gentle standing back bends that counteract forward hunching, include chest openers, shoulder rotations, and upper back stretches. This sequence requires almost no space and can always be done entirely in office attire. A stress reduction focused sequence could emphasize breath work and nervous system regulation. Start with seated breath awareness, then incorporate gentle movement synchronized with breath. You could include forward folds, either seated or standing, gentle twists and side bends, and maybe a slightly longer final relaxation. This approach works well during high-stress periods or when you're teaching in less than ideal physical spaces. An energy boost sequence would work perfectly for afternoon slumps. Begin with seated or standing breath practices that incorporate arm movements. Think breath of joy. Progress to gentle flowing sequences that gradually build heat without making your students sweat. Include balance poses to promote focus and awareness. This kind of sequence can be particularly effective during the post-lunch energy dip. A Friday unwinding sequence would help transition participants from work mode to weekend mindset. Begin with standing or seated tension-releasing movements, then incorporate gentle heart-opening poses to counter computer posture. And with a slightly longer guided relaxation, focusing on releasing the week's accumulated stress. For all corporate sequences, for all class plans in general, I recommend planning in chunks, what I call the flip book approach. Read about it in my book, The Art of Yoga Sequencing. Design short, self-contained sequence modules of 5 to 10 or 15 minutes each that can be mixed and matched based on the specific needs of that day's students, the time constraints, or the space limitations. This allows for flexibility when unexpected circumstances arise, like half the room being occupied by a surprise meeting or class time being cut short. With any luck, your students will start to learn these sequences so they can practice on their own. Remember, consistency helps all students, including your corporate students, develop their practice despite the less frequent meeting schedule typical of workplace classes. If you can create signature sequences and deliver them regularly, they become familiar touch points, and this lets your students notice their progress despite practicing just once weekly or twice weekly. Let's talk about some practical logistics to note beyond the classroom that can make or break your success as a corporate yoga teacher. First, establish clear communication channels with your primary contact. Determine how any scheduled changes will be communicated, whom you should contact if you're running late or have a really sudden emergency and need to cancel, and how participants will be notified about class details. Don't presume that workplace communication systems will include you automatically. Create redundant notification methods if you can. As you discuss what time to offer your corporate yoga class, try to slot it midday. Workers are less likely to come in early or to stick around after work when they just want to go home if yoga is presented as optional. But workers are more likely to attend class when it's a respite in the middle of the day. Develop a reliable system for tracking attendance, especially if your payment structure depends on participant numbers. Some companies require signed attendance sheets for their own wellness program tracking or for insurance. Clarify these requirements up front and create a streamlined process that you can just replicate every week. Props management requires special attention in corporate settings. Will you bring props or will the company purchase them? Where will they be stored between classes? If you're bringing your own props and storing them in your trunk, you might want to invest in a rolling cart or a big duffel bag that allows you to bring the props in and out with ease. Be prepared with liability coverage specific to off-site teaching. Your regular yoga teacher insurance might need some supplementation for corporate work. Some companies will ask you to sign additional waivers or agreements regarding liability or to show that you have coverage for their location as additional insured. Have these reviewed by your own insurance provider to ensure adequate protection. Have each of your corporate students sign a liability waiver, even if they've already done it for the wellness center at the corporation. It's never bad to have double waivers. Create a professional substitute system for times when you can't be the one teaching. Unlike studio classes where the studio might handle the substitute, corporate classes will likely expect you to manage your own coverage and send your own substitute. Develop relationships with a few reliable teachers who could cover for you and create a standardized handoff process that maintains consistency for participants. It helps to bring your substitute once or twice before they show up to sub so that they can assist or participate in the class. That way they know the ins and outs, how to get there, who shows up, the kind of class that you teach, and what the student expectations are. Finally, establish feedback mechanisms. That's how you continually improve your teaching and service of your students. While corporate students might be less forthcoming with immediate feedback than your studio students, their continued attendance is ultimately determined by the value they receive from your class. Try giving periodic anonymous surveys or setting out suggestion boxes or having brief end-of-quarter check-ins to gauge your student satisfaction and get ideas of things that they might like to see you add. Beyond the practical aspects we've discussed, teaching corporate yoga offers really unique opportunities for your professional growth and for your career development. Let me share some strategies to maximize these opportunities. Corporate teaching can be a gateway to other wellness services within the organization. Once you're established as a trusted provider, you might be invited to offer workshops on specific topics like desk ergonomics or stress management or mindful leadership. Be prepared with expanded offerings that complement your yoga teaching. Documentation of outcomes, that is corporate speak for proof of results, can significantly enhance your professional credibility and lead to more opportunities. See if you can track measurable impacts like attendance trends or participant feedback, or even broader workplace metrics that the company might share with you. These success indicators strengthen your case when you propose a contract renewal or when you want to expand to other departments or locations. Network strategically within the organization. While of course you'll always maintain appropriate professional boundaries, be aware of opportunities to connect with the decision makers who might influence the wellness programming. Simple actions like arriving early to chat with your students or following up on specific workplace challenges they mention to you can build valuable relationships. Consider developing corporate-specific credentials or taking specific trainings to help differentiate your services. Certifications in ergonomics or workplace wellness or stress management or corporate mindfulness can position you as a specialist rather than a generalist yoga teacher. These specialized credentials often justify higher rates and expanded service offerings. Build a portfolio of corporate testimonials and case studies. With appropriate permission from the students and the company, document success stories that demonstrate the value of your services. These can then become powerful marketing tools as you approach other potential corporate clients who have similar profiles. Finally, don't overlook the reciprocal benefits of your corporate teaching experience with your general yoga teaching experience. The skills you develop in corporate classes, like teaching to diverse ability levels, adapting to challenging environments, and communicating yoga benefits in accessible language, these will all enhance your teaching in every context. Corporate yoga makes you a more versatile and resilient teacher overall. Let me leave you with this thought. Corporate yoga occupies a unique position in the yoga teaching landscape. It brings practice to people who might never enter a traditional studio. It creates accessibility by meeting students where they are, physically in their workplace, and metaphorically in their comfort zone regarding attire, language, and approach. While teaching in corporate environments requires you to be adaptable, and while it sometimes strays far from the quote-unquote ideal yoga setting, it offers the opportunity to demonstrate that yoga is not defined by perfect conditions, special clothing, or particular environments. Instead, yoga is a practice that can bring benefit anywhere to anyone in any circumstance. In many ways, corporate yoga returns to yoga's roots as a practical discipline integrated into daily life rather than separated from it. By bringing practice directly into the workplace, we help students bridge the gap between yoga and real life. If you have questions about corporate yoga teaching or experiences to share, I'd love to hear from you. Join the discussion at comfortzoneyoga.com in our free community for teachers called The Zone. There's a link for you in the show notes. Thank you for listening to Yoga Teacher Confidential. I'm Sage Roundtree, and I'll see you next time.